Jerry Jeudy bomb. I bet we are both feeling great about this Browns team. Derek, this is a player that we had talked about previously. This was a player that we had kind of thought of as like a desired trade target from Denver. I believe the links surfaced last off season was when these links kind of popped up, and ever since then, you especially have been on the Jerry Jeudy bandwagon. You've been clamoring for him to be a Cleveland Brown. Well, you got your wish, and it didn't even require that second round pick that the Broncos were requiring at the time. We're going to get Jerry Jeudy in for just a 5th and a 6th round draft pick. Derek, when we look at the deal as a whole, and when we look at the need of wide receiver two questions. Number one, how do you feel about the trade itself as far as the trade value? And number two, how do you feel about Jerry Jeudy potentially filling that need? Is the wide receiver 2, not the wide receiver room, but the wide receiver 2 spot where we need it to be moving forward into this next season?
Yeah, so on the trade itself, I was beyond shocked because all we've been hearing, and you're right, I've been pounding the table over and over and over about Jerry Jeudy. Even if it was a second, I said it was worth it. And I'll explain why here in a second. But, when you look at the trade itself, Tristan, last week we came on here and I said the Browns have 2 5th-round picks and 2 6th-round picks. So if you want to move up in the draft, whatever, you have some, pieces to do so. I believe I even said possibly trade for a player. I think I just kind of threw that in. Well, guess what? The Browns traded a 5th and a 6th round pick and still have a 5th and a 6th round pick. And you traded a 5th and a 6th for a guy who is 24 years old on a 5th-year option, former 15th overall pick. You got for a 6th and a 5th. Like, that's crazy. So to answer your first part of your question, I was just in shock. I was in shock when I saw that we traded for him to begin with, because it felt a little out of nowhere. Not that it wasn't a need, but it was just like, holy shit, like it happened. We've been waiting. So that's to your first part. There you go. Second part, is Jerry Jeudy the guy? Is he the fit? Absolutely, 100% hell yes. And the reason why I say that is especially given the fact of some of the names that were being thrown out, right? T. Higgins was franchise tagged. Michael Pittman was probably off the table. So, your big options that, we had hoped for, not realistic, not going to happen. You were hearing Gabe Davis. He did absolutely nothing for me. I was not a fan. I didn't like that really at all. Me and you have talked about Mike Williams. He did nothing for me. I understand the appeal, but I had major, major, major concerns with Mike Williams with his injury history and all those sorts of things. And, for me, aside from what you gave up, I want to explain something to people who don't really know about Jerry Jeudy, because he gets a bad rap. Jerry Jeudy was a Blitnikoff winner in college. I almost said in high school. In college, this dude has been an extremely high talent from high school into college and was an absolute monster at Alabama. He played alongside, I want to say, Devontae Smith, and sorry for bringing him up, but he was there, Henry Ruggs, and he was arguably the most talented receiver of that bunch when they played together. And, for a guy who dominated in college, and I literally, when I tell you in college, I was like, man, the things I would do to get a guy like this on the Browns. I was blown away by his skill set. And then coming into the NFL, he's had a lot of really good moments. He's shown flashes of not just being a good receiver, but being an elite receiver. He has shown flashes of being elite. And the problem is, Jerry Jeudy, throughout his 4 years in the NFL so far, has had inconsistent coaching, inconsistent offenses, inconsistent quarterbacks. He hasn't had stability around him as a receiver to really show what he is. And you can say the same for Cortland Sutton. You can say the same for Tim Patrick, who's there. Like, that's a talented group of wide receivers. Very talented. Unfortunately, they haven't really had talent to help them, and that kind of sucks for them. But, for the Browns to land Jerry Jeudy, this is a guy who, again, biggest factor, the biggest thing that makes me pound the table in joy and jump for joy is the fact that this is finally, Tristan, finally, we have a young receiver who you can build around and cement him as a guy who's going to be here. I know he's going to be on his 5th-year option, and just to get the contract stuff out of the way real fast, I do believe the Browns should let him play out his 5th year and probably extend him mid-season, if not after the season, depending on what you see from him. I wouldn't extend him yet. I think that's a little bit absurd, no matter how good I think he is. But this is a guy who's going to come in who is an elite route runner. This is literally young Amari Cooper 2.0 that you're getting. And I said that in the past. I'll say it again. Go watch the tape. The dude has a degree in route running. He's very fast. He's got some size. He's not huge, but he's not small either. He's 6'1", 194 pounds. This is a guy that is a playmaker, right? And for Denver, they used him kind of weird, but I think his fit here in Cleveland is perfect. I think he's the perfect guy. As I said, Amari Cooper 2.0. Amari Cooper ain't going to be here forever. As much as we love him, we can hope that he's going to be around for a few years to come. He just probably won't. We probably might get another 2 years maybe max out of Amari Cooper. And what better to have a guy that has molded his game after him, that has vocally said that he looks up to Amari Cooper, is a big fan of Amari Cooper, and tries to play like him. What better than to bring that guy on the same team with Amari Cooper to learn from, to train from, and eventually become that number one? Because that's what I think he can be. As far as his role here right now currently as a number 2, Tristan, this is crazy. Because you now have Amari Cooper, who's a fantastic route runner, great leader, number 1. Jerry Jeudy, great route runner, fast, a lot of untapped potential as your number 2. And then Elijah Moore as your number 3. He's a good route runner himself. He's shown that he's pretty good. And I think you can get more out of him in this new offense that the Browns are going to have. And then the receivers down the line on the depth chart, I think this helps them out too. This helps out guys like Tillman and Bell, because you now have that pressure taken away from having that number 2. That was a huge hole. Njoku was that guy, but that shouldn't be the case. Njoku should still be able to be Njoku and not have to compensate for the wide receiver room. And now we have a guy that is going to come in, play his role, be great in his role, and also have the chance to learn and develop and be the guy that he was drafted number 15 overall to be. If I'm not mistaken, he was in the same draft as Justin Jefferson, was taken higher. And obviously prospects and rankings, that stuff is subjective. Obviously guys turn out to be better than some who he thought were going to be better. But again, this is a guy with elite, and I'm going to keep saying this because I believe this is what he will be, not what he is currently, but what he will be, has an elite traits and elite skill set. And now you bring him into this room on this team. I literally could sit here and talk for hours how valuable I think this trade is. And I'm going to say this right now. It's March 9th, 2024. This is going to be a day that you look at in the future as Browns fans and say, holy shit, that was a team changing, that was an organizational changing moment. Because I think today is the day that we got our number 1 receiver on this team for years to come. And I know that's controversial. I know some people are going to disagree. Some people think Jeudy sucks. And maybe I'm wrong. But at the very minimum, you see what he is in Denver. He's an 800-yard receiver, roughly, and he's a guy that can make plays for you at the very worst, right? But at the very best, I think he can be one of the best receivers in the league. I truly believe that. So I know I've been rambling, but Tristan, the Browns trade for Jerry Jeudy, a fifth and a sixth round pick. He's 24 years old. I should mention he'll turn 25 here in like 2-3 months, so he'll be 25 for the season. But still, what was your initial reaction? And kind of now that it's processed a little bit, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so Derek, you and I were talking before we started the podcast about like what we were kind of doing right before the trade happened. You were at work, of course, and for me, I was cooking up a mean breakfast, late breakfast. Got to get those sausage, egg, and cheese sandwiches going. You know what I'm talking about, like the good stuff, right? And I look at my phone finally when I'm done cooking. I see I got a text from you, and you didn't even say what happened. You were just like, holy crap, paraphrasing for hopefully monetization. We'll see, probably not. But but and I was just like, what? And then I look right below your text at the notification that we had just gotten Jerry Jeudy. And I gotta say, excitement was actually an emotion that came later. For me, the first emotion I got was relief.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
okay. Because, we'll get into it, especially because, for me coming into this offseason, I'm sure this was the same thing for you. Wide receiver 2 was the number one need.
Yep.
100% it was the number one need, because just when we look at what we're going to try to do with this new style of offense, you need at least like 3 different reliable receiving threats. We had Amari Cooper, who we know is very reliable. We have David Njoku, who he burst onto the scene last year in the receiving game, but we've known and appreciated for a long time before the recognition across the NFL that he's super, super talented. And we just weren't utilizing him the best. And now you finally got that third piece. And, the fact that we were able to, before free agency kicked off, get our guy, that's huge.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why I was intrigued by Mike Williams was because we could go out, we could trade for him. He's on a 1-year deal. That was the key factor. 1-year deal at a number that, for what other receivers are going to get in this free agent market, would be a good number. For me, Jerry Jeudy fits that even better because Jerry Jeudy, the number itself is lower than what Mike Williams would have came to, but also I think that because of his age and because of where he's at in his career and where he's been at physically, he's more reliable, more dependable. And they're just 2 different styles of receivers. But I think that Jerry Jeudy fits really, really well into what this offense is and what it's going to be. You had mentioned Gabe Davis not really doing much for you. I was okay with bringing in Gabe Davis, but I was scared about what the number would be, in the risk attached to it. And this is why I like the trade so much. It's a 5th and 6th round pick in a draft where the later rounds of the draft are not that great. NIL is really factored in to the quality of the players later into the draft. As far as I believe it was Jack Duffin who I saw this from, that as far as when we consider the age guardrails that AB usually likes to go by, there may only be like 100 prospects that fit on his draft board, which is insane. But it signifies that this was a year that, the draft wasn't something you could depend on to fill a need. And, if we would have went into the draft needing wide receiver 2, or if we had overpaid for a Marquise Brown, Calvin Ridley, somebody along those lines, I would not have been feeling great about it, to be honest with you. Um, so from the actual risk reward standpoint of it, I think it's a huge, huge, huge benefit for us. I really do feel like even if it goes terribly with Jerry Jeudy, you can cut ties after this year,
Yeah.
right? And you didn't give up a ton to get rid of it or to get that asset, to take that risk. And I really don't even think it's that big of a risk, Derek. Like, I think that this is a guy that has not been in a stable situation. I mean, we got to remember, like, hell, this might even be trivia. Who was his starting quarterback when he first got into the league? Because was it not? I don't think it was Paxton Lynch, because I think that was before him.
Yeah.
But who was the Broncos quarterback before that? It might have been Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco. I was about to say.
It might have been Joe Flacco.
Yeah. Joe Flacco or
Drew Lock.
Drew Lock. Yeah. Because Trevor Siemian was before.
I want to say, yeah, he was before. But regardless, this guy hasn't had stability at the quarterback position. And then, of course, you've got the Russ situation, which we actually will talk about a little bit later as well.
Yep.
When we look at just overall, like who he is as a player, the prospect, the talent, it's all there. He's got the whole package. It's about, can we put him in a system that maximizes it?
Yep.
And I think that with the addition of Ken Dorsey, what he's been doing in the NFL with the pass game, he knows how to use multiple receivers, talented receivers. He knows how to get the absolute best out of them. Especially, we saw that early on with Stephon Diggs when he first got to Buffalo. Of course, there's kind of been a little bit of a fall off for him towards the end. I'm really, really excited about this guy. He's a great fit, great player who I think can get even better. And Derek, I know you said that you would prefer he plays out his 5th year. I would not be opposed to us extending him this offseason and taking a gamble, because there is a chance, right? And I think that this is something that Jerry Jeudy might actually be open to as well. If you were to sign him to an extension, right, that maybe was like a 2-year, 3-year extension with like maybe only a couple of years guaranteed, right? Like, it guarantees him a higher price point, but also at the same token, like you can potentially like maximize value here, because if you can get him to play at that production that you think you can get him to play at, that you feel like he can reach to, then I really feel like it could be a great gamble for the Browns to get him at a low per year contract. Now, why would Jerry Jeudy want to sign something like that? Well, it's guaranteed money. So that always helps. But not only that, but if you sign him to a shorter term deal, you just said it, he's going to turn 25 this offseason. He'll still be in a position where he can hit the wide receiver market after having a few great years with Cleveland if it works out. And he could be getting an insane bag by that time. I mean, the receiver market's been taking off over the past couple of years, and I'm guaranteeing you there's going to be another player that gets way overpaid this free agent cycle. I'm calling it. I just know it's going to happen, and I'm thankful that it's not going to be us that does it. That was the big worry I had coming in. But, just incredible deal. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Derek, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, man, I'm legit. I'm not gonna allow myself to get too overly excited in this moment, because I don't want to say things too crazy. Even though I'm gonna tell you my opinion, but I'm just pumped. I'm pumped, man. I really am, because all I've wanted for this team is to go out and get a guy. Like, get a guy at the wide receiver position, because I feel like we have tried and tried and tried and tried. OBJ with Jarvis, and, that was okay for a short period of time, but Jarvis was always the guy. He was always great. And then after that, it was like, I feel like we just haven't had a succession plan. Like, we haven't had a significant plan at wide receiver. And this team has gone out, and we'll talk about this here in a second, but, we've tried drafting guys, and DPJ, I loved DPJ. I was elated when we got him, especially as late as we did. And I thought he played up to every bit of expectations that I put on him. That was a great pick for the Browns. And, it just so happened that his time was coming to an end. The Browns drafted Cedric Tillman, who was a very similar style of player, to replace him. He moves on. We kind of try to fill the hole there with Tillman. That's still work in progress. But in terms of going out and getting a solidified guy, whether if that be trading up in the draft and taking somebody is going to be good, or going out and trading for somebody or signing somebody, like, I feel like this team has just absolutely been behind the 8 ball on that. Like, the NFL is a 2-receiver minimum league, right? The Dolphins, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. The Vikings, Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. Buffalo, Diggs, and it was Gabe Davis. Now it's going to be Khalil Shakur. I can tell you a bunch of different teams. Look at the Commanders, right? Scary Terry's a hell of a receiver. They went out and they get Jahan Dotson. The Seahawks, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, they go draft JSN, right? It's a 2-wide receiver league, and Amari Cooper is fantastic. He has been awesome for the Cleveland Browns. But number 2, man, go get a number 2. Go get another guy. And a lot of this fan base try to talk themselves into Elijah Moore being that guy. I still think Elijah Moore is talented. He's not that guy. He is not the solidified guy, or at least not yet. Maybe he could be. Who knows? But he's not there yet. This, as you mentioned, Tristan, was a desperate need. And given the options available, like I said, I mean, Gabe Davis did nothing. Mike Williams did nothing. If we had gone out and signed Calvin Ridley or Marquise Brown, I could have, I would have been happy. I could have talked myself into it. I think that would have been an okay solution, but it's not to the same level of what this is. And even with the draft, I have scouted, and I mean, I've spent weeks and weeks and weeks looking at every single receiver in this draft, and I think this is a historically great receiver draft. But at the same time, no matter how great any of these guys are, whether if your name is Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, or Malik Neighbors, these guys aren't coming in day one and being great, right? It is very hard to find a Puka Nacua. It's very hard to find an Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's not easy. And, are the Browns the team to do that? We haven't historically proven it. So this had to be done. I didn't think Jerry Jeudy was going to be the guy. I'll be honest. I kind of gave up on the dream because it had been so long. Denver seemed to want to hold on to everything. We'll talk about with Russ later, but that team is absolutely going down a horrible, horrible rebuild. That team is just shitting the bed at every step. And the Browns were fortunately able to take advantage. And it's crazy because a year ago it might have cost a second, and today it cost a fifth and a sixth. Like, that's the crazy part. Tristan, are you ready to kind of shift gears into the next stem off of this conversation, or you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, just the last thing was part of the reason why it was so shocking, even though there were previous links to him, was just because, like, there was no Mary Kay Cabot report like, oh, the Browns and the Broncos are in conversations, like they're in talks. No one had even like the slightest like inkling that something was going on. So that's part of the reason why it was so shocking. As far as the actual player itself that we targeted, that itself wasn't necessarily surprising. Just because it's a player that we had been in for before, and we know the AB value. So that was